You ever have one of those days where everything you believed about someone just cracks?
Yeah.
That's how mine started. Before I get into it, hey everyone, welcome to Her Revenge Stories. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. I read every single one of your stories too, and trust me, this one's going to hit deep.
Okay.
So, my name's Jessica Miller, I'm 22, and until recently, I thought my mom was my best friend. We used to joke about how we were like sisters. She raised me alone after my dad passed away in a car accident when I was 9. We weren't rich, but she worked hard, 2 jobs, late nights, and she'd always tell me, "Jess, I'm doing this so you can go to college and never struggle like me." And I believed her. For years, every birthday, every Christmas, every tax refund, she'd mention the college fund. It became this invisible, comforting thing. My future, safely waiting in a bank somewhere. But the day I learned the truth, that comfort turned into fire. That morning, I woke up in the little townhouse we shared on the edge of Columbus, Ohio. It was one of those sunny, deceptively peaceful days, the kind where you don't expect your whole world to change. I had just finished community college and was set to transfer to Ohio State in the fall. I'd been accepted, a big deal for me, and now it was just about paying tuition. So, I sat down with my laptop, logged into the school portal, and saw the total, $14,800 for the year. My stomach twisted. Big number. But I remembered the college fund. The one Mom always said would cover at least the first 2 years. I made coffee, walked into her room, and gently knocked. "Hey Mom, can we talk about my tuition stuff?" She looked up from her phone, hair messy, wearing her pink robe, the one she'd had forever. "Sure, sweetie, what's up?" "I need to send the payment to OSU this week. Do you want me to transfer it from the college account, or should we go to the bank together?" I still remember the pause that followed. It wasn't long, maybe 2 seconds, but it was long enough. Her eyes froze, then darted away. She said, "About that account, that phrase. About that account." My chest tightened instantly. "What do you mean?" I asked. She sighed, like I was bothering her. "Well, I had to use some of it, Jess. Things have been tight. You know, with bills, and some of it." I cut her off. "How much is left?" She hesitated again. "Not much." I felt my face go hot. "How much, Mom?" She finally looked at me and said quietly, "Nothing. It's gone." The words didn't register. I actually laughed, thinking it was some kind of messed up joke. "Gone? Like, what do you mean gone?" I had to dip into it, Jess. "Life's expensive. You think this roof pays for itself. Dip into it?" I said, my voice shaking. "You told me that money was untouchable. You said it was my future." She stood up suddenly, defensive. "Don't you raise your voice at me." I did what I had to do. I remember my throat closing. "So, what? You spent $20,000? On what?" And that's when I noticed it, a man's jacket on the chair by her bed. Not mine. Not hers. It was leather, expensive looking. I felt my stomach drop. "Who's here?" I asked. She froze again. And then, from the bathroom, out walked Gary. Tall, scruffy, wearing jeans and that smug kind of smile that instantly makes your skin crawl. Gary had been around for the last year, Mom's friend. He was in his mid-40s, jobless, always between opportunities. He'd crashed at our place more than once, always eating our food, always watching TV like he owned the place. "Morning, Jess," he said, like nothing was wrong. I couldn't even look at him. "You spent it on him?" I asked quietly. "Mom, please tell me you didn't." She crossed her arms, defensive again. "He needed help. He's been going through a rough time." I felt like I was losing oxygen. "So, you used my college fund to play savior to your boyfriend?" "Don't talk about him like that," she snapped. "Gary's been good to me." "Good to you," I said, my voice cracking. "He lives here for free. He doesn't even pay rent." She glared at me. "Watch your tone." I couldn't believe it. My mom, the woman who'd once cried when I got my first scholarship letter, was standing there protecting a man who didn't even have a job. I walked out. I had to. My hands were shaking so bad, I could barely grab my car keys. I drove around for an hour, aimlessly, tears streaming down my face, trying to understand how everything had flipped so fast. Later that day, when I came home, she was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee like nothing had happened. Gary was gone. "Jess, we need to talk," she said. I sat down, numb. "I didn't mean for things to go this way," she started. "But you need to understand, I've done everything for you. And now that you're grown, it's my turn to live a little." I stared at her in disbelief. "Live a little? With my future money?" She sighed. "You can always take out student loans, Jess. Everyone does." I couldn't even respond. My chest hurt. I stood up. "You know what, Mom? You can live however you want. But I'm not letting this slide." She laughed, actually laughed. "What are you going to do, see your own mother?" Her voice had that cruel, mocking tone. Like she didn't think I had it in me. And maybe I didn't, not yet. But those words stuck with me all day. "See your own mother." That night, I sat on my bed, laptop open, staring at my acceptance email from OSU. My dream school. My entire childhood had led up to this. And she'd thrown it away for a man who didn't even stick around half the time. I looked up what I could do: legal options, financial fraud, misappropriation of funds. And the more I read, the angrier I got. That money had been in a custodial account, technically mine since it was set up when I was a minor. She'd been the guardian, not the owner. And she'd drained it without consent. For the first time that day, I stopped crying. I started documenting. Bank statements, old tax returns, every message where she mentioned the college fund. I saved it all. I even found one old email where she told my aunt, "I've got Jessica's college savings safe and sound. Almost $24,000 now." That was 2 years ago. I took screenshots of everything. The next morning, actually, no. The next hour, I emailed a local attorney. Someone who specialized in family financial disputes. I didn't even think I'd get a reply that night, but she called me within minutes. Her name was Rachel Price, and the first thing she said was, "Jessica, you're not the first person this has happened to. And yes, you have a case." I didn't know it yet, but that phone call would change everything. Because from that moment on, it wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was war, quiet, strategic, legal war. I went to bed that night staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. My mom's laughter, Gary's smug face, the way she said, "See your own mother," it all looped in my head. I whispered to myself, "Watch me." The next morning started quiet. Too quiet. I woke up before the sun, heart pounding like I hadn't slept at all. I sat on the edge of my bed, just thinking. You know that kind of silence where your thoughts are louder than anything around you? That's where I was. I had made up my mind. I wasn't backing down. Before I tell you what happened next, if you're watching this, go ahead and subscribe to her revenge stories and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because trust me, what I'm about to tell you isn't something anyone should ever go through alone. I made myself some coffee and sat down with my laptop again. My email from the lawyer, Rachel, was sitting right at the top. Her message said, "Jessica, I reviewed what you sent me. You have a very strong case. Let's talk this afternoon if you're ready." I replied instantly, "Yes. Tell me when and where." At around noon, I drove downtown to her office, a small place, tucked between an old bookstore and a cafe that smelled like cinnamon and hope. I remember my hands were shaking so badly, I almost spilled my coffee walking in. Rachel greeted me with the warmest smile. She was in her late 30s, confident but calm. The kind of woman who looks like she's seen everything and doesn't scare easily. "Jessica," she said, shaking my hand, "you did the right thing coming to me." I sat down, trying not to cry again. "I don't even know if I'm doing the right thing," I admitted. "It feels wrong to go against my own mom." She nodded slowly. "I understand. But Jessica, this isn't just about emotion. This is about theft, financial and emotional. If the account was under your name and she used the money without your consent, that's misappropriation. It's illegal." I blinked. "Even if she's my mom?" Rachel gave me this look, soft but serious. Parents are supposed to protect their children's future, not destroy it. That line stayed with me. She asked for every detail. When the account was opened, when the last deposit was made, what my mother had said. I told her everything. By the time I finished, she had a list of steps written down. First, she said, we'll request the bank records officially. Then, we'll file for a financial disclosure. If she spent the money on personal expenses or her boyfriend, we'll prove it. I nodded, my chest tightening. She did. I know she did. Rachel leaned back in her chair. Jessica, I've handled cases like this. You'd be surprised how often people betray the ones closest to them when money's involved. It was weird hearing someone talk about it so calmly. For me, it was chaos, heartbreak, confusion, rage. For her, it was a case, a puzzle, something she could fix. And maybe that's exactly what I needed. We went over paperwork for about an hour. By the time I left her office, the sun was bright and hot, the kind of warmth that sticks to your skin. I sat in my car, staring at the folder in my lap. Legal forms, bank requests, a statement I'd need to sign. It didn't feel real yet. Like I was living someone else's story. I went home that afternoon, half expecting my mom to act like nothing had happened again. But when I opened the door, she was already in the living room, pacing, phone in hand. There you are, she snapped. Where were you all day? I closed the door quietly. At work. I lied. Her eyes narrowed. I called the bank earlier. They said someone accessed our old account records. My stomach dropped. She must have gotten a notification. You went behind my back, she said, voice rising. After everything I've done for you? I kept my voice calm. It's not your account, Mom. It's mine. She laughed bitterly. Oh, don't you start with that legal nonsense. You wouldn't even have that money if it wasn't for me. I saved it. I worked for it. You think you deserve it more than me. Her tone was full of venom. But under that anger, I heard fear. She knew she was in trouble. I'm not fighting you, Mom, I said quietly. I'm just trying to get back what was mine. She rolled her eyes. What are you going to do? Take me to court? Over a few $1,000s? You're ridiculous. I didn't answer. I just walked past her, went to my room, and shut the door. Behind it, I heard her mutter, ungrateful brat. That night, Rachel emailed me again. Bank confirmed they'll release records within 24 hours. I'll contact you tomorrow. Tomorrow. The word echoed in my head like a countdown. Around 10 p.m., I heard laughter from downstairs. My stomach twisted when I realized whose voice it was. Gary. He was back. Again. I opened my door slightly and listened. She's still mad? Gary asked. She'll get over it, my mom said. She doesn't have the guts to actually do anything. They both laughed. And in that moment, something changed inside me. Whatever guilt I'd felt about going against my mom vanished. I realized she wasn't just careless. She was cruel. I walked back into my room and opened my laptop again. I started writing a detailed timeline. When the fund was created, the time she mentioned it, when Gary moved in, when she started withdrawing money. I wanted everything documented. If this was going to court, I'd be ready. The next day, Rachel called. Jessica, the records came in. I think you should come see this. I drove to her office, hands tight on the steering wheel. When I sat down across from her, she slid a stack of papers toward me. These are the transactions from the account over the last 18 months. I started reading. My heart sank lower with every line. Restaurant charges, hotel stays, gift shops, even a payment to an auto repair place for a truck, and I knew my mom didn't own one. Rachel pointed at the transaction list. See this pattern? Most of these purchases are under Gary's name or related to his expenses. That's clear misuse. I just stared at the paper. She really spent it all. Rachel nodded slowly. Every last cent. I didn't cry this time. I just sat there, my body numb. What happens now? I asked quietly. We'll file the case, Rachel said. It'll take a few weeks, but once it's in motion, she'll be served notice. Served, I repeated, the word feeling heavy in my mouth. When I got home that evening, my mom was in the kitchen again. This time, she looked nervous. Maybe she sensed something was coming. She glanced up. "You've been out a lot lately. What's going on?" I set my bag down. "You'll find out soon." Her eyebrows furrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "You said I wouldn't have the guts. You were wrong." She scoffed. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I walked away before she could answer. My heart was racing, but for the first time in days it wasn't from fear, it was from clarity. The next morning, I got a call from Rachel's office. "It's done," her assistant said. "Your mother has officially been served." And just like that, the war began. At first she ignored it, pretended it wasn't happening. But a week later, I heard her yelling on the phone, pacing the kitchen again. "How can she sue me? She's my daughter." I didn't interrupt. I just listened from my room. That night, she knocked on my door. Her voice was softer now, shaky. "Jessica, can we talk?" I opened the door slightly. She looked exhausted, mascara smudged, eyes red. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said quietly. "I just thought maybe I could pay it back one day." I looked at her for a long moment. "Would you have told me if I hadn't found out?" She didn't answer. "That's what I thought," I said, closing the door gently. That was the moment she realized this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about betrayal. I remember standing there, my reflection staring back at me in the courthouse bathroom mirror. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. No, it was something else. A strange mix of anger and relief. I looked like I hadn't slept in days, and honestly, I hadn't. My name is Hannah Cole, and this was the day I finally faced my mom, the woman who spent my college fund on her boyfriend. Before the hearing, I stood outside the courthouse, scrolling through my phone. Notifications were popping up, texts from friends, even my aunt saying things like, "Are you sure you want to do this to your mom?" I ignored every one of them. Nobody knew what it felt like to watch your dreams disappear because your own mother betrayed you. Nobody understood how it felt to see your future slip away while your mom laughed at dinner with her new boyfriend, wearing jewelry you recognized from the receipts you found in her drawer. I could still remember that morning perfectly. I had walked into the kitchen, where my mom and her boyfriend, Rick, were eating breakfast. Rick gave me that fake smile he always did, the kind that said, "I know you hate me, and I love that you do." My mom looked at me, sipping her coffee like nothing had happened. "Morning, Hannah," she said casually, as if I hadn't just discovered that my entire college fund was gone. I sat across from her and tried to hold my voice steady. "Mom, when were you going to tell me? About the money?" Her eyes flicked toward Rick before coming back to me. "You don't understand how hard things have been. I needed help. Rick needed help. We'll pay it back eventually." "Eventually?" I laughed, bitter and sharp. That money was my future. "You had no right," Rick interrupted, his voice deep and smug. "Hey, calm down. You're acting like she stole it. It's all one family here." I remember staring at him, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "You're not my family," I said coldly. "And you," I pointed at my mom, "you stopped being mine the second you chose him over me." That was the last real conversation we had before I filed the claim. It took weeks to build the case, months to get the courage. But standing there, waiting for the judge to call our names, I realized I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. Inside the courtroom, everything felt sterile, cold lights, polished floors, and the quiet hum of voices echoing off the walls. My mom sat on one side of the aisle, next to Rick, who had his arm draped lazily over the back of her chair. She looked nervous, but still defiant. When our eyes met, I saw a flicker of guilt, but it disappeared fast. The judge entered, and everyone stood. The next few hours felt like a blur of words, documents, and questions. My lawyer, a kind older woman named Janet, guided me through every step. "Hannah, tell the court what happened," she said gently. I took a deep breath. "When I was 10, my dad passed away. He left me a fund for college, money he worked his whole life for. My mom was the trustee, meaning she could access it, but it was meant for me. When I turned 18, she told me it was safe, that it would be waiting when I was ready to go to school. I paused, trying to steady my voice. 2 months ago, I went to the bank to finalize my enrollment for college. They told me the account had been emptied. Every dollar was gone. There was a murmur in the courtroom. The judge's eyes narrowed slightly. Janet nodded for me to continue. I confronted my mom, and she admitted she used the money to pay off Rick's debt and buy him a car. They took everything my father left for me, and when I tried to reason with them, they laughed. Rick shifted in his chair. That's not true. The judge raised a hand. You'll have your turn, Mr. Rick. My mom looked down at the table, avoiding my eyes. That moment, seeing her unable to even meet my gaze, hurt more than anything. Janet presented the receipts, the withdrawal records, even the photos of the car in Rick's driveway. It was irrefutable. My mom's lawyer tried to twist it, saying she had financial hardship and emotional distress. But the truth was clear. By lunchtime, the courtroom had turned heavy. Everyone could feel it, the weight of betrayal, the pain in the air. My mom looked small, her shoulders hunched. Rick, on the other hand, looked angry. He kept whispering things to her, his jaw tight. During a short break, I stepped outside. The sun hit my face, and I realized how different the world felt when you decided to stand up for yourself. It wasn't easy, it was terrifying, but it was freeing too. When we went back in, the judge called my mom to speak. Her voice trembled. I didn't mean to hurt her, she said softly. I thought I could fix things later. Rick was in trouble. I didn't want to lose him. I could feel tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You already lost me, I whispered under my breath. Janet leaned toward me. You're doing great, Hannah. Just breathe. The judge sighed, flipping through the documents one last time. It's clear from the evidence that this was a misuse of funds intended for the plaintiff. Ms. Cole, you violated the terms of the trust. Therefore, the court orders that the funds. Before he could finish, Rick slammed his hand on the table. This is ridiculous. That money was gone before she even found out. The judge's gavel hit the bench sharply. Enough, Mr. Rick. Sit down. Rick glared at me, his face red with fury. You think you've won, huh? You've just ruined your mom's life. I looked at him calmly. No, I said quietly. You did that. The courtroom went silent again. The judge continued. The court orders that Ms. Cole must repay the full amount within 90 days or forfeit personal assets of equivalent value. Furthermore, Mr. Rick, he looked directly at him, will be investigated for fraud, as evidence suggests he benefited knowingly from these funds. I heard gasps behind me. Rick's jaw tightened, and he started to stand, but officers were already moving toward him. My mom covered her mouth, whispering, Rick, like she couldn't believe what was happening. When the judge adjourned, I just sat there for a moment, staring ahead. My body felt weightless, like all the anger had burned itself out. Janet touched my shoulder gently. You did the right thing. I nodded. I know. I just wish it hadn't come to this. As I walked out of the courtroom, the crowd started to whisper, some in sympathy, others in judgment. I didn't care anymore. Outside, the afternoon sun was warm, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Rick was being led away in handcuffs. My mom stood near the door, her face pale, tears streaking her makeup. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but I didn't stop. I walked right past her. Janet caught up to me. You okay? Not yet, I said, but I will be. We reached the parking lot, and I turned to look at the courthouse one last time. It wasn't victory I felt, it was closure. But deep down, a quiet fire was still burning, because I wasn't done yet. That night, I went home and opened my laptop. The story wasn't over, not for me, not for what my mom and Rick had done. There was one last thing I had to do. I logged into my social media, where my mom loved to post photos with Rick, the trips they took, the gifts they bragged about. I uploaded the court documents, every proof of what they did, and simply wrote, when your mom chooses her boyfriend over her daughter's future, sometimes justice needs a little help finding its way. Within hours, the post exploded. Comments poured in, People were furious, supportive, shocked. My mom's friends unfollowed her. Rick's reputation?
Gone.
His business? Closed within days. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about truth. About standing up when nobody believed I could. That night, as I sat by my window watching the city lights flicker, I whispered to myself, "Dad, I did it." And for the first time in years, I felt proud. Not for hurting anyone, but for finally standing up for me. The night after the verdict, my apartment felt both quiet and loud at the same time. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, notifications, messages, even a few reporters asking for comments after my post went viral. The story had taken off faster than I could have imagined. People were tagging me in videos, sharing their own experiences, even thanking me for speaking out. But beneath all that noise, there was silence. A heavy, aching silence. I sat on the couch, staring at the TV that I hadn't turned on. My cat, Millie, curled up beside me, sensing the strange energy in the room. The clock ticked toward midnight, and I found myself whispering out loud, "It's over." Except it didn't feel over. Not yet. I kept replaying everything in my head. My mom's face in the courtroom, the way she looked when they took Rick away, the disbelief in her eyes. Part of me wanted to let it all go, to close this chapter and move on. But another part, the deeper part, needed her to understand what she had done, not to hurt her, but to make her see. That's when my phone buzzed again. It was a message from an unknown number. "Hannah, it's me.
Can we talk?"
My stomach tightened. It was my mom. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the message for a long time. Finally, I typed back, "If you want to talk, come here. Tonight." She didn't reply, but 20 minutes later, I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, she was standing there, the same woman who raised me, but smaller somehow. Her eyes were red, her hair disheveled, and she looked like she hadn't eaten or slept since the hearing. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I stepped aside without a word. She walked in, glancing around like she was afraid to touch anything. The air between us felt thick, like we were both holding back years of words that had never been said. "I saw what you posted," she started quietly. "Everyone's talking about it. People are calling me all kinds of things." I crossed my arms. "I didn't post anything that wasn't true." "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "But did you have to humiliate me like that?" I laughed, not cruelly, just tired. "Mom, you spent my college fund on your boyfriend. You lied to me.
You laughed at me.
What exactly did you expect? Sympathy?" Tears filled her eyes. "I made a mistake, Hannah. A terrible one. But I was lonely. You don't understand what it's like to feel like no one wants you anymore." I shook my head slowly. "You had me.
You always had me.
And you threw me away for someone who used you." She started crying then, full, ugly sobs that shook her shoulders. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered every night I cried wondering how I'd pay for school. Every moment she brushed me off like I was an inconvenience. I walked to the kitchen and poured her a glass of water. "Sit down, Mom." She obeyed, clutching the glass like it was the only thing holding her up. "What happens now?" she asked weakly.
They froze my accounts.
"I don't even know how I'm going to pay rent." I took a deep breath. "You'll figure it out." Like I had to. Her head dropped. For a long time, neither of us said a word. The clock ticked louder, and outside, the city hummed quietly. Then she looked up at me again. "I just want you to forgive me, Hannah. Please." Forgive her. That word hit me like a punch. I stared at her for a long time before answering. "Forgiveness isn't free, Mom. It's earned. And you haven't even started." She looked away, ashamed. "What do I do? Tell me what to do, Hannah." And that's when I realized what my revenge truly was. Not the post, not the lawsuit, not the money. It was accountability. Making her finally face the person she'd become. So I told her, calmly but firmly, "You start by fixing what you broke. Sell the car Rick bought. Pay back every cent you owe. Then maybe, I'll consider forgiving you. But until then, I don't want excuses. I want action." She nodded slowly, tears still streaming down her face. Okay, she whispered. I'll do it. I didn't say anything else. She stood up, gathered her purse, and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned back one last time.
I'm sorry, Hannah.
Truly. I just nodded. Good night, Mom. When the door closed, I felt the weight lift. Not completely, but enough. The kind of relief that comes after you finally speak the truth, no matter how painful it is. I walked to the window, looking down at the quiet street below. The world felt still. For the first time in years, I felt free. My phone buzzed again. A new notification. My post had hit 2 million views. I opened the comments, scrolling through strangers who were cheering me on, sharing their own stories of betrayal and healing. One comment stood out. You didn't just win a case. You showed us all that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. I smiled. That was it. That was what I wanted people to understand. A few hours later, as dawn started to touch the horizon, I decided to visit one last place before the day ended. My dad's old workshop. It had been years since I went there. The smell of oil and sawdust hit me the second I opened the door. Dust covered everything, but his tools were still lined up perfectly, just the way he left them. I walked to his old workbench and traced my fingers over the initials we carved together when I was 8. H+D. Tears filled my eyes again, but this time, they weren't from anger. They were from peace. Dad, I whispered, you were right. Money comes and goes, but people show you who they really are. And I finally saw it. I took one of his old screwdrivers, a simple thing, worn from years of use, and tucked it into my bag. A reminder of who I was before everything fell apart. When I stepped outside, the sun was rising. Warm, golden light spilled across the sky, and for the first time, I didn't feel like that little girl who lost everything. I felt like a woman who took her life back. Later that morning, as I packed for my move, a small apartment near the college I'd finally enrolled in thanks to a scholarship, my phone rang again. It was Janet, my lawyer. I just got the notice, she said. Your mom sold the car and made her first repayment. Looks like she's actually doing it. I smiled faintly. Good. Maybe she finally realized it's not about money anymore. Janet paused. You're stronger than most, Hannah. Most people would have walked away. I thought about that for a second. Maybe. But if I walked away, she'd never learn. And I'd never heal. We hung up, and I stood there, looking around my tiny apartment. Bare walls, second-hand furniture, a few boxes still unpacked. But it was mine.
Paid for by me.
Not my dad, not my mom, not anyone else. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started typing again, another post, but this time, not about anger. It read, Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's choosing peace over pain. Sometimes it's proving you can rise, even when those you love tear you down. And then, at the end, I added, subscribe to her revenge stories. There's always more to tell, because sometimes the quietest voices carry the strongest truths. I hit post. Outside, the world moved on. Cars passed, people walked, and sunlight filled the room. I took a deep breath, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, control. My mom might have taken my college fund, but I took back something far more valuable. My voice, my dignity, my future. And as I closed my laptop, I whispered one last thing to myself, the same words I had repeated in my head all day, from the courtroom to this quiet morning. She thought she could ruin my future. Instead, I rebuilt it, stronger than ever. And that was the real revenge.